Hello everyone, I'm Justine and I'm delighted to be sharing with you an overview of my upcoming book titled Corporate Governance in Banking, Nuggets from Canada, Georgia, Germany, United Kingdom and Zimbabwe. First of all, it is important that I highlight the motivation behind the writing of this corporate governance book. The first issue is to understand the dominant position that the modern organization has assumed in the modern economy, particularly the role of the modern corporation in transforming economies. And this is significantly important when you look at the role of banks in different economies and how banks are championing economic transformation. There has also been an increase in the number of corporate failures, particularly banks in different economies. And these books look at corporate governance and the causes of bank failures, mainly emanating from the corporate governance deficiencies in different economies. There is also need to capture the empirical views regarding the subject of corporate governance in different economies. Hence, this book looks at these 6 countries and the corporate governance issues in these different jurisdictions. It also looks at closing the gap or the disconnect between theory and practice with regards to the issues of corporate governance in different countries, and also to define what I call the methods of optimal solutions, which are actually informed by corporate governance literature and corporate governance theories and practice in different jurisdictions. And the book has a total of 13 chapters, including the introduction of this book. And the introduction covers the distinctive competencies of banks, which is what separates banks from all other institutions. And also it reviews the meaning of banking and the evolutions that have happened with regards to the functions of banks from the previous centuries to where we are today, where banking is actually characterized by increased digitization and the use of artificial intelligence. And I also did a profile of 6 bank failures in different countries in this introductory chapter in order to determine the key themes of corporate governance shortcomings in banking institutions, starting with the Integrity Bank of Alpharetta in United States, Georgia, and also the Home Bank of Canada, Franklin National Bank in Long Island, and Hestad Bank in Germany, Renaissance Merchant Bank in Zimbabwe, and the much talked about Barings Bank in the United Kingdom. So this profile forms the foundation of all the discussions in the preceding chapters of the book and determines the methods of optimal solutions that I managed to write in the concluding chapter, which is chapter 12. The first chapter looks at the theories of corporate governance, and I covered the common theories in terms of the stakeholder theory, the shareholder theory, stewardship theory, management hegemony theory, new institution theory, and the ethics theory. The reason why this is important is in order to determine the foundations of corporate governance and the need to enhance corporate governance practices in banking institutions. I also covered a review of the corporate governance codes in these different countries in order to determine the key foundations or the key themes in the corporate governance codes in these different countries. Chapter 2 looks at shareholder activism and the need to have shareholders participating immensely in the corporate governance issues of different countries, particularly in the banking institutions. And the third chapter reviews the role of the board in terms of what are the functions of the board of directors in an organization and the significant role that the board play with regards to corporate governance. And I also looked at the structure of boards in different countries as per the case studies of this particular book. Chapter 4 reviews the director performance and remuneration in terms of how different countries get to assess the performance of directors in their jurisdictions and how the remuneration of directors are determined in all these particular countries. And also a look at the risk management and internal control systems in banking institutions in different countries, particularly the need to have an enterprise-wide risk governance system in each of the banking institutions today. An interesting chapter on banking processes, which looks at the governance of service processes and the distinctive characteristics of banking systems and what makes banks more unique and important as an area of study, particularly with regards to the characteristics of services and the need to have a hybrid governance system with respect to the banking operations. This forms part of chapter 6 of the book, which starts by reviewing the service characteristics and the need to determine a banking service strategy which focuses on enhancing the service encounter, particularly with respect to the financial intermediation role of banks and the role of banks in economic transformation. Chapter 7 reviews the middle management revolution, which is a call to have middle managers playing a significant role in corporate governance issues, particularly founded on the negative principal agent problem, which forms the foundation of most of the corporate governance discussions and literature. Chapter 8 looks at bank performance measurement, how the performance of banks should be determined based on both the financial and non-financial measures of performance and the reliability of the performance measures that are being used in banking institutions today. The bank failures of the past did cast a shadow on the existing measures of bank performance measurement, and there is a need to have optimal solutions and determine effective measures to determine the performance of banks. Chapter 9 looks at the organizational development, and it is my call to ensure that organizational development skills become paramount or be considered in any corporate governance literature and discussions based on the role that organizational development plays and the role of the board of directors, C-suite leaders, and managers in the implementation of organizational development theory and practice in the operations of banks. I also look at the requirements for effective organizational development in banking institutions as a driver to organizational effectiveness and as a driver to ensure board effectiveness. Chapter 10 considers spirituality and ethics in governance and a comparison of the mechanistic view and the organistic view of the organization. The mechanistic view being founded on the scientific management theory, the bureaucratic theory, and the Hawthorne studies, but there is a need to have more of a spiritual paradigm with respect to corporate governance in modern organizations. And I also consider ways of building spiritual organizations in the banking service processes. Chapter 11 reviews the corporate meetings and the different meetings that organizations actually carry, the types of meetings and the need to ensure meetings alignment with regards to organizational effectiveness. The role of meetings in an organization cannot be overemphasized, but there is a need to align each and every meeting in an organization in order to ensure organizational effectiveness. Based on these 11 chapters, the concluding chapter, which is chapter 12, looks at the methods of optimal solutions. And these methods of optimal solutions are kind of related to the need for organizational development theory and practice in the operations of banks, and the consideration of organizational development as a strategic, business, and board imperative to ensure the effectiveness of organizations today. These methods of optimal solutions include the need for risk governance, the need for decision support systems, organizational learning, and ensuring that we build spiritual organizations, the need for management innovation and performance management systems that are aligned to what the organization intends to achieve. This, in a nutshell, is my upcoming book on corporate governance in banking, nuggets from Georgia, Canada, Germany, United Kingdom, and Zimbabwe. I'm pleased to be talking about this subject on corporate governance, banking, and organizational development. I thank you.